Hi there. It's been a while since I've uploaded a video, but that's largely because we recently had exams and I haven't had any complete projects that were worth putting in a video yet. Well, none of my projects are finished. I have done a few small things, but not enough content to make a video. So I'm just putting together everything that I've done thus far. Probably starting in chronological order. So first is this, which is from when during the summer the heat was damaging or breaking all my drive belts for my ball mill. So I couldn't use the ball mill anymore, which then inspired the idea for making a much bigger one. But then for one project I needed silicone or silicone rubber for making a mold or something, which I'll show you later. And then once I got the silicone, I had an epiphany. I could make a mold of the drive belt, because I didn't know where to get them other than paying an exorbitant price for them, from getting them from the supply in America. Down here in South Africa it's quite costly to get shipping from up there. So I thought, make a plaster mold and then put string inside the mold just for reinforcement so the rubber doesn't stretch, and then fill it with silicone. And that's been working quite well. Unfortunately my mold did end up breaking, but you can see it here. I started off by taking a yogurt lid, and then I placed the drive belt in the lid, but first putting Prestick just underneath here so that the plaster of Paris wouldn't get underneath it, so it would make it easier for making the other half of the mold. So I placed the drive belt in the lid. Then I placed all the plaster in, and to save plaster I also put a smaller cup in the middle just to take up the volume. And then once that was set, I covered the mold with Vaseline, put the cup back in the hole so that I could make the other half, and then also made two little dimples just so that I could get the alignment correct. And then I poured in the other half of the plaster, obviously first making like a tape wall around it, and then can't be bothered to align them now. And then I got the two halves, and then when I was pulling out, well, I had made one belt, I pulled it out, cleaned it up. Well, here I had made some channels to allow for any excess silicone, and then when I pulled out the silicone ring, it worked, it was fine, I cleaned it up. But then when I made the second one, it didn't want to come out as well as the first one, and I ended up putting in enough force to end up breaking the mold in half. But it's probably easily repaired. Thankfully the other half of the mold did come off. And then recently I made another lead ball mold using a very similar process. I just took a beer can, put a marble in, just put like a chunk of waste plaster underneath it to prop it up. I had to like shape it quite a lot to get it to stand properly. This was just so that the plaster would get underneath it, so I didn't have a very thin layer. And then I just let it harden, and then I took more plaster, and then I just made another tape neck or tape wall, and then I poured the plaster over it, let it set, and then I heated it up in the oven just to like drive off a lot of the moisture. Obviously, because when I put the plaster in around the marble, I can't get the level quite perfect, so I had to carve it out so that it was like just at the middle of the ball. And then I again covered it in Vaseline, poured in the second half, and then I put it on, and then once I had the two halves hardened, then I drilled through it. Originally I had a hole there, but then I realized I wouldn't be able to get it out if I had a hole going through the mold there. So then I just drilled another one and placed that on. Because the surface is uneven, that provided the guidance. Also, just from aligning the two holes, I can get the alignment quite easily. And then the next thing I did was I got some very thin nichrome wire. You probably can't even see it on camera. You just barely. The camera just doesn't want to focus right now. So I've been making these little squibs. They're just nichrome wire bridged across this little wire here, and then a reasonably thick paper tube with hot glue at the back, and then I put flash powder in, and then put hot glue on top of it. It makes some really nice easy popping mechanisms. And then this is a visco fuse machine that I started working on. I don't see this project coming along anytime soon. I made the winding bits here. I made a whole lot of bobbins. I couldn't be bothered to go and buy them, and it was a lot of work to make 16 of these, one for each groove. And then I decided I was going to have another crack at making a ball mill. So I got this motor here from a friend. He should hopefully make himself visible down in the comment section. You know what to do. This is a motor from a pool pump. It still works. It's a bit noisy, but they usually are. It just needs a little cover on the back here for this impeller to put air over the heat sinks here to keep the motor cool. I just had to put a new plug on, put the wiring in, and then because this motor spins at I think 2,800 RPM, something around there, I needed a lot of gear reduction to get it down to the 50 RPM that I wanted from the drum. So I found a program that I could make the gears, and then I printed them out full size. But obviously the biggest gear and also the other gear didn't quite fit on a single sheet of paper. So where you see these lines, that's where the paper has been joined. This one's made of 4 pieces of paper, but I printed it out so that they would fit like that. So it was quite a few pieces of, I think 6 sheets of paper just to print out these gears, and that will give me the gear reduction I'm looking for. And then this is the silicone I had bought. I needed it to make a mold of this nose cone that I got from a rocket kit, because I want to try and make a nose cone that out of much lighter weight materials. So I bought some silicone aluminium powder because I also needed that, and then I also got some polyurethane expanding foam for this, but I didn't anticipate that just along the sides where it would meet the wall of the silicone it would be rather weak, so you could like squash it. So then I looked for some fiberglass, and I got some from the same guy that got me the motor. Say hi. Yeah. And I made this nice fiberglass nose cone, which is very hard, very strong, and very light. The fiberglass has an interesting smell to it. So this is what I'll be using for a rocket that I'm working on. Speaking of which, I have here, it is a rather tall rocket. So lay it against that. It stands that tall, so I can almost put my chin on the tip. It comes to just touching my chest. And then for the parachute, I decided to make my own, so I needed to get a hold of some nylon. I used a pattern off of Richard Naka's website. I'll leave a link in the description. Surprisingly, there are no videos on the internet showing how to make it, this type of parachute, but Richard Naka's link is the only one that I could find. It's very difficult to take a picture of an open parachute, but you can sort of see it there. Yeah, that's what it looks like. It's 12 panels sewn together with reinforcement stitching, and then a little patch in the middle there, and then it's got 12 strings attaching it to the end here. This was about 2 days work, probably less than that if I spent the entire day on it. Yeah, but this one is a lot smaller than this rocket's parachute. This one that's been shown in a previous video, because this one came down probably in about 2 minutes, and with a light breeze it took a very long time for this rocket to come down. So I needed a much smaller parachute, but because this one was using an umbrella parachute, or a parachute made from an umbrella, it came down very slowly, so I needed a much smaller one so it would come down faster. But because this one is also much lighter, it'll come down probably in about the same speed. So there's sort of ups and downs for that. And then I've also got the circuitry made. Just needs a little bit of refinement, and then it will be ready for putting in. Unfortunately, my lathe stopped working recently. I was using it, and then I switched it off, went inside, next day I came, tried to switch it on, nothing happened, so we've handed it in for repair. But they replaced the circuit board, and then the motor wouldn't work, so they handed it in to an electrician, yada yada yada. I still don't have it. Then last school holiday, around about the end, I was offered to go and work in the machine shop of someone that used to do work for my mother. So he offered that I could come make something in his workshop. So I decided that this would be the perfect project. A steel rocket motor, the B200 from Richard Naka's website, and I machined the nozzle by myself. Now, surprisingly, it saves you so much money if you can machine something by yourself instead of paying someone to do it. Now, this cost me 17 Rand in steel, which is about a chunk this size. But it would have cost me 1,500 Rand just to have the nozzle machined for me. So, big saving there. And then I have a lot of aluminium that I'm busy chopping up. This was a mag wheel I was given because the nuts had been worn, or the area where the nuts go had been severely damaged. So I was given the wheel to chop up, and I took the wheel to the workshop of the guy that let me machine the motor, and he helped me chop them up. And then so he chopped it up into chunks. This one, a piece broke, so he helped me chop it up into chunks, and then I took those things home, and then I chopped it up into much smaller pieces that I could then fit into my crucible. Alright, I think that's everything I wanted to cover. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.